What's up, everybody? This is your boy, Chris C. Pup Surratt, bringing you another edition of Twisted Pup TV's UFC Fight Review. On today's show, we'll be reviewing the UFC 290 beautiful bout. On the card, we had some great fights. In the main event, we had Alexander Volkanovski against Yair Rodriguez. Co-main event, we had Alexandre Pantoja against Brandon Moreno, and also some fantastic other main event fights. The night ended up producing an unusual set of bouts that we've seen them be won in seconds, and it was a beautiful thing. Starting off in the early bouts, where we got to see what was pretty awesome. A fight between Jesus Aguilar, where he defeated Shannon Ross by knockout in the first round in 17 seconds. And that was not the only fight that ended early in the first round. We also got a chance to see Denise Gomez defeat Yasmin Jauregui by TKO in the first round in 20 seconds. Which brings me to a great man. Great fight. Great fighter. We got a chance to see the ruthless Robbie Lawler fight an up-and-coming Nico Price in what came to be his last bout. Ruthless Robbie Lawler has had a long career in the UFC and fighting. I know he did a little time in Pride. I think he was in IFL and a little bit in Strikeforce as well. So he has been around the block and has been a great fighter the whole time. In his bout with Nico Price on this night, he went there determined, looking great, and defeated Nico Price in the first round by a flurry of punches in 38 seconds. It was awesome. And the emotion he showed after he was the winner of that bout told me that this might be the end. And it was. He decided that he was going to retire from fighting and move on to spending more time with his family and to other endeavors. Kudos to the ruthless Robbie Lawler. Let's give him his claps. Great fighter, great man. Gave us great fights over the years, and we only pray that he has a bright and beautiful future ahead of him. Next up, we also got to see Bo Nickal defeat Val Woodburn in the first round, trying to knock his hat off as well in 38 seconds as well, same as Robbie Lawler. And this is, I think it was the first. I'm not sure if I've ever seen any other UFC or any kind of, mixed or martial art event where several bouts ended in the first round in a couple of seconds. It was a beautiful thing, and I enjoyed it. Like most people, I do enjoy those long bouts where they go the whole set of rounds, then it's a back and forth event. But this was a very interesting and a nice thing to see, where we're seeing a lot of first round domination. So up next was one of the best fights, I think, of the night between Dan Hooker and Jalen Turner. Now this was one of the best fights because it was back and forth. And at one moment you thought Jalen was winning, at another moment Dan was taking over. Somewhere in round 2, Dan got cut. So he had all the blood in his hair, and it was turning like reddish pink, and that was looking cool, and they was fighting. It was awesome fight, a very awesome fight. Ended where it was a split decision, where the winner turned out to be Dan Hooker, and I applaud that. It was a great fight. I did not see who was going to win. I was very proud that they gave it to Dan. Jalen put in a great fight. I can see nothing but good things in his future as well, but kudos, Dan. Great fight. Hope the future is bright for both of these young men. Now, let's get to the one match that brought around the most excitement of the night, I would say. That would be between Druscus Du Plessis and Robert Whittaker. Now, it was a great fight. Robert Whittaker, one of the great UFC fighters of his time. Druscus is a new fighter. He's really new. I barely know anything about him. You know, most of the things I know about him really is just him talking shit about other fighters. So I was looking forward to seeing him fight. Looking forward to seeing him fight somebody like Robert Whittaker, because Robert Whittaker is a great fighter, and he put up a great match against Druscus. There was times there where I thought he had a chance, but Du Plessis is a monster. He is a physical beast, especially for his weight class. Muscles ripping all over the place, and ended up defeating Robert Whittaker in the second round, TKO. Great fight. But the excitement really happened after the fight, during the post-fight interview in the ring. You know, they decided that they was going to bring the great Israel Adesanya into the ring, you know, because they're both great fighters. We are looking forward to a fight between them both in the future. But Israel had been hearing all of the things that Druscus had been saying, because Druscus had been making the rounds, making statements.
Well, I mean, did those belts ever go to Africa? As far as I know, it came to America and New Zealand. I'm going to take a belt to Africa. I'm the African fighter in the UFC. Myself and Cameron, we breathe the African air. We wake up in Africa every day. We train in Africa. We're African born. We're African raised. We still reside in Africa. We train out of Africa. That's an African champion, and that's who I'll be.
Thank you.
It's like Israel Adesanya is not an African fighter. He doesn't represent Africa because he grew up in New Zealand, which is a pretty much known fact in the UFC world. And saying that Du Plessis is the only real South African fighter. And you can see how that would make a Nigerian upset. So, of course, Israel Adesanya, being a man that doesn't hold back words, had a lot of strong words for Du Plessis. He kept on calling him a word that's frowned upon by many. I don't care. He was calling him a nigga. It was called him a nigga several times. Said that my nigga, what's up, my nigga, and just pretty much referring to the fact that Du Plessis was stating that he was a South African. So Israel's like, you must be my nigga then. And now one could get upset about that, I guess. I did not, because much like many who seen this and many who knew how Du Plessis was going about talking about Israel Adesanya and other fighters, that if you bring the heat, you're going to catch the heat. So let's check out what our favorite MMA content creators were saying on this. My man Ryan Clark and Daniel Cormier. Let's see what they had to say about the whole back and forth between Israel Adesanya and Druscus Du Plessis.
Short time. We're 9 weeks from Saturday, last Saturday, to the championship fight in Sydney, Australia. That's where Izzy lives. That's where Izzy represents and trains. These two young men, though, do not like each other. Israel Adesanya holds no love for Druscus Du Plessis, and it's rooted in a lot of different things. But you watch him go at him in a way that we really haven't seen Izzy with people. Very rarely does Izzy show emotion. He went at Du Plessis with like emotion. and he wants to fight him. He said that he manifested this fight between the two. But what makes Dricus du Plessis so impressive is his physique. Obviously, he's a big guy for the weight class, but he's so unorthodox. And because he's so unorthodox, it works. Does that unorthodox style, though, cause issues for the last stylebender? Because what Izzy has been in with is a guy in Robert who's very good at popping in and out. A guy in Alex Pereira who's a kickboxer. Du Plessis is none of those things. He's a guy that darts in and out. He's a guy that when he got Robert down in the wrestling, he was beating him up at the end of round number 1. And you could imagine if he's able to take the last stylebender down, he would try to do the same thing. This is a very, very tough matchup for the champion, even though he may not feel it. He said he wanted it, and he wants it for a number of reasons. He wants to beat Dricus. How does Dricus match up to the long-reigning champion? This was interesting. I love it. When you have an issue with somebody, you want to fight them, RC.
Yeah.
They get an opportunity to fight. That's the beauty in our job.
I think the issues are kind of the part that people from here don't necessarily understand, right? We're talking about South African, we're talking about Nigerian, and Israel Adesanya's heritage, his plain out genetics being questioned. Yep. And that's when Israel Adesanya says, nah, look at me. I don't need, he said 36 in me. I think it's like 23 in me or something like that. But he's like, I don't need that to know where I'm from. And you're talking about Israel Adesanya that sat down with us on the pivot and spoke about how growing up in New Zealand, his Nigerian heritage was something he was bullied about. And so now you have this man from South Africa where apartheid ran rampant throughout the 20th century. Yep. You have someone questioning that. And so this was personal, right? You mentioned we don't see Izzy go at dudes like that. That's because it's personal. This is different, right? This is like being from the boot and growing up where we're from and hearing some of the things that we heard about ourselves, that we heard about our skin, and now you get to face that dude. The thing is this. I do believe being inside the octagon with Alex Pereira helps Israel Adesanya in this fight for this reason. The thing I noticed most about Dricus when he dropped Rob was, oh my God, this guy is so strong. There is no harder puncher, striker in the world than Alex Pereira at 185 pounds. And Israel Adesanya has spent his last 7 rounds inside the octagon with that man. I think this fight will have him focused. I believe he'll train much in the same way people say he upped his training for the last fight with Alex. And I think it's going to be an absolute barn burner. But I do believe Israel Adesanya's smarts, Israel Adesanya's skill, his technique is what he leans on for this fight. And I believe it's going to be a masterclass in how to control an octagon.
You know, when you guys when people start to get a little upset at Israel for the way that he behaved, go and look at his Instagram. He has a video of Dricus kind of questioning where he's from in wins, talking about him and Cameron Simon. And I like Dricus, but we cannot omit some of the behaviors that led to the actions that happened on Saturday night. And if you need a little bit more information, as Ryan said, look up the apartheid. I am by no means saying that Israel Adesanya using that word inside the octagon was acceptable. But when you look into the details, when you get deep into what these guys are going through or what Izzy is perceiving this to be, then you start to kind of come to terms with what's going on in his mind and his behaviors.
Me, I cringe when I heard it. I understand the way that could be perceived. But we also have to remember, Israel Adesanya was one of the few black fighters, right? Because he is a black man. He will be seen like that, no matter if he's Nigerian descent and grew up in New Zealand, when he said, yes, I support Joe Rogan because that's my N-word, right? I would never say that because the association that I have with the word growing up in New Orleans, Louisiana, being called that, having to deal with that, being thought of as inferior because of my skin color and the way that word was used, I wouldn't say those things. Israel has a different association to the word. And so I think there's so many nuances that go into his behavior inside the octagon. The thing I hated was this. Dricus, right, has instigated and started the fire that led to that moment. And when he was face to face with Israel Adesanya and finally had that opportunity to, as the young people say, talk your ish, he did not. And then he went to the press conference and goes, that is not the way a champion is supposed to act. I don't like that. That's a soft move to me because you had your opportunity. And so there's so much that goes into it. I know we don't have time, but for that part of it, people really need to study the history of apartheid, the history of South Africa, and understand the association with that word is definitely different for many of us. And that part I did not approve of, even though it's not my place to approve of anything he does as a man.
I'll be honest, RC, I didn't know. Joe Rogan told me. Because I was like, Joe, is he talking about? And Rogan has a lot of knowledge. And he immediately pulled up his phone and showed me. Well, he goes, Drake is Dutch, and he went through this whole thing, right? And right away, I was like, oh, this is what this is. So it was like, it's just a lot to it, guys.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, I advise you to go and dig into all this a little bit to see why the bad blood between Israel Adesanya and Drake du Plessis is bad blood. As much as you guys enjoyed the John Jones, Daniel Cormier thing because it was real, this is not fabricated. This is real, and it'll be explosive when it finally comes to a head. RC, great job, man. You're always good with these types of conversations.
I see that, and I totally agree with Ryan. If you are going to be out there talking crazy about people, making statements about people, you need to be prepared to do that in their face. And du Plessis was not ready to do that. He did a lot of backtracking. And Israel Adesanya wasn't for it. And I really think that, if you're going to say that type of stuff, you're not South African, try to question somebody's heritage or where they're from, you need to be ready to back that up in front of their face. And that's why we cannot wait until the match between Israel Adesanya and Dricus du Plessis coming soon. I will be there. Now, the co-main event was a great fight. Lasted all rounds between Alexandre Pantoja and Brandon Moreno. Back and forth they went, up and down they went, ground and pound, punches, kicks, you name it, great fight. Could not say who was going to be the winner at the end. Personally thought that Brandon had done enough to win, but as I always say, you leave it up to the judges, you leave it up to lose. So, Alexandre Pantoja pulls out the victory against Brandon Moreno. And of course, I do not believe this is the last we will see of Brandon Moreno. And of course, it's not the last we'll see of Alexandre Pantoja. We can't wait to see more. Now, the main event for most people was a coming out party because not many are in the know about the Big V. Bout between Alexander Volkanovski and Yair Rodriguez was eventful. Yair Rodriguez was putting in some work, got in a nice kick. I thought he had a chance there for a second, but as many know in this MMA game, Alexander Volkanovski is a monster, a beast. One not to be messed with, and we expect to reign supreme for a long while now. His aggressiveness and his style dominates guys, and it's impressive to watch. So, Alexander Volkanovski beat up on Yair Rodriguez and defeated him in the round 3 of the main event of UFC 290. What a great fight. What a great show. And what it brings us is preparation for more great fights. Shout out to the great Ruthless Robbie Lawler. Thank you for many, many years of great fights and great events. God bless you in your future. We cannot wait and we'll be right there for the Israel Adesanya Dricus Duplessis fight. We cannot wait. And you know what? Eventually, we're going to have to talk about this fact that Francis Ngannou is going to fight Tyson Fury. Weird. All right, I'm your boy, Chris C. Pup Surratt. Thank you for tuning into another episode of Twisted Pup TV presents UFC Fight Review. We hope to be bringing you some live shows with panels, great guests, and great interviews soon and very soon. Thank you for tuning in. I'm out. Peace.